Hey guys, today we're diving into one of the most mind-blowing experiences I've ever been a part of, and it's a little eerie. We're talking, what's the darkest thing that ever happened in your hometown that no one ever talks about? Some of these stories might seem like small-town legends. Others, they're too real to forget, even if everyone pretends to. Get ready for some wild, funny, and downright chilling stories from real people all over the internet, but told like they happened to me. Before we jump in, where are you watching from? Let us know your city in the comments. And if you've ever had something similar happen to you, we want to hear your story too. All right, let's get into it. You ever grow up in a place that feels normal on the outside, but deep down you know something's off? That was my town. Quiet. Lakeside. The kind of place where you could leave your bike outside and it'd still be there the next morning. Where everybody knew everybody and we all had that friendly neighbor smile. But underneath all that polite picket fence small-town charm, there were stories. Things people whispered about but never really said out loud, especially not about the house at Birchwater Lake. Yeah, that house. I was maybe 12 the first time I noticed it. It's not that it hadn't been there before. It had. Always had, actually. Right on the curve of that little dirt path by the lake. 2 stories, weathered gray clapboard siding, a porch that leaned slightly like it had a secret. The windows were dark, even during the day, and something about it just kept your eyes from resting on it too long. Like your brain didn't want to take it in all at once. No one talked about it. I remember asking my mom once, just offhand, if anyone lived there. She paused at the sink, hands in dishwater, and didn't answer right away. Then, with this tight little smile, she just said, "Oh, I don't think so. Probably empty." That was it. I never saw anyone go in. Never saw lights, never saw the door open. But once, just once, I saw smoke coming from the chimney. It was in early fall. I was walking home from school, kicking rocks along the edge of the lake, and there it was. A thin gray trail curling up into the sky like a lazy ribbon. I stopped in my tracks. Smoke meant fire, and fire meant someone was home. I remember the way my heart sped up, not from fear, exactly, just this sense of wrongness. Like the world had shifted a few degrees to the left, and I was the only one who noticed. I asked my friend Theo about it the next day. He got real quiet. Then he said, "You're not supposed to look at that house." I laughed at first, thought he was joking, but he wasn't smiling. He just said, "My cousin used to live across the lake." He said once he looked out the window at night and saw lights in there. Blue ones, like police lights, but no sirens. Then he told me something I didn't forget. People go missing out here, you know? Not a lot, just once every few years. I didn't believe him, not at the time. But then came the summer when the house disappeared. I was 16, had a beat-up pickup, a taste for sneaking beers by the water, and that itchy feeling teenagers get where you just need to prove something to yourself. Me, Theo, and our friend Josie decided we were going to camp out by the lake one weekend. Not in the official campground, though. No, we wanted to do it old school, out near Birchwater, the off-limits side. We pitched our tent in the trees just out of sight of the house. It was still there, exactly the same, slouching, watching, like it knew we were there, even if it didn't care. That night was quiet, still, almost too still. I remember the bugs stopped buzzing around 10, then the frogs stopped. Even the wind died down, like the air itself was holding its breath. Around midnight, we were just sitting by the fire when Josie said she needed to pee. I offered her the flashlight, but she waved me off. A few minutes passed, then 10, then 20. I called her name. No answer. Theo and I started getting nervous. I stood up, grabbed the flashlight, and started scanning the trees. That's when I saw it. The house. It was different. The windows were lit, every one of them, glowing this dull, sickly yellow like old headlights through fog. There was movement inside, shadows like people walking back and forth, pacing. And then I swear to God, someone stepped out onto the porch. A woman, not old, not young. Was wearing a dress like someone out of the 1940s, hair up in a bun. She just stood there, looking straight at us. No expression. Theo grabbed my arm hard. "We gotta go." But I couldn't move. I was locked in place, staring back at her. Then she lifted her hand, slowly, and pointed behind me. I turned. Josie was standing there, barefoot, soaked to the knees, eyes glassy. We didn't ask questions, just grabbed our stuff and ran. The next morning, we came back for our tent, and the house was gone. I don't mean the lights were off. I mean the house wasn't there. Nothing. Just trees. The foundation was gone. The porch. The chimney. No footprint. No damage. Just like it had never existed at all. We didn't talk about it. None of us. Josie never really went back to being the same after that. She moved 2 years later, the O2. I stayed in town a while, but I never went near the lake again. And to this day, when I look at an old map, like a really old one, from the 1940s or earlier, that house is there, marked as Blake Residence. But if you look at anything newer, like Google Maps, just forest, like it was erased. Like we were never supposed to remember it. But I do. And I still dream about that woman on the porch. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maybe that was just a glitch. Or maybe my brain made something out of shadows and fog and teen beer. I've wondered that myself. But the thing is, this town has more than one story like that. And some of them don't go away even when the people do. Let me tell you about the coach. People always talk about how high school football is sacred in small towns. Friday night lights, pep rallies, the whole deal. But where I grew up, it was more than a tradition. It was religion. And Coach Harris. He was our pastor. He'd been coaching since before I was born. Big guy, crew cut. The kind of deep voice that made you stand straighter when he walked by. He didn't just teach football, he taught you to be a man. Or that's what everyone said. Every trophy in the glass case, him. Every state championship, him. Half the dads in town had played for him, and the other half wished they had. I played under him my junior year, second-string linebacker. It's not a star or anything, but I loved it. It felt like a brotherhood. Intense, sure, but structured. Like we were part of something bigger. But looking back, there were cracks, little things. Like how some players always seemed to disappear for a while, and no one ever explained why. Or how he'd call kids into his office after practice. Close the door, stay in there for an hour, and they'd come out quiet, pale, changed. I remember one time Coach grabbed one of our younger players by the face mask, real aggressive, and barked something in his ear. The kid Marcus flinched like he'd been hit. Later that week he quit the team, no explanation, just stopped showing up. Coach told us not to worry about it. Not everyone's cut out for this. We all nodded like sheep. Then, my senior year, just a month before regionals, everything stopped. No warning, no morning announcement. Coach was just gone. I remember walking into practice and seeing Mr. Keegan, the algebra teacher, holding a clipboard with this weird, nervous look. Coach Harris won't be joining us this season, he said. We're going to keep things moving forward. And that was it. No details. No goodbye. No mention in the paper. No police. Nothing. The town acted like he'd retired early. But he didn't leave town. I saw him 3 days later at the gas station, standing by pump 4, staring at nothing. His eyes were glassy, like he'd aged a decade overnight. I wanted to say hi, but I didn't, because something about him felt off, wrong. Like there was a pressure in the air around him, and if I stepped too close, I'd feel it in my bones. Then the stories started trickling out. I don't know why. Maybe people felt freer once he wasn't at the school anymore. Maybe it was just time, but you'd hear things at parties, at whispers. One guy, a former quarterback, told me Coach used to call certain players into his office and make them earn their spot. Not just drills, not just yelling. Things worse than that. Another said he'd seen Coach hit a player so hard he passed out and then made him run laps the next day like nothing happened. There were rumors of tapes, of late-night meetings at the gym, of special treatments for the kids who needed discipline. Still, no one ever came forward officially. Not the victims, not the parents, not the school. It was like the town couldn't handle it, couldn't bear the idea that someone like Coach Harris, the man they'd celebrated at homecoming parades, the man who baptized kids in the lake, could be a monster, so they erased him, or tried to. Except, you can't really erase a person like that, not when the scars are still walking around. I've run into a few of my teammates over the years. Some are fine, but others, they carry it. You can see it in the way they flinch when you mention the team. Or how they change the subject when you say his name. I tried reaching out to Marcus once, remember him? It's the kid who quit. I found him on Facebook a few years back. Sent him a message. Hey man, random question. Did something happen with Coach back in the day? He replied 2 days later. Just one line. Yeah, but nothing I can prove. I never asked again. The weirdest part, I ran into Coach last year. After all this time, it was at the grocery store. I was back in town visiting my parents. He looked smaller somehow, older, but when he saw me, he smiled. Linebacker, he said, like it was still my name. I gave him a tight nod and kept walking. As I turned the corner, I heard him whisper something under his breath. I couldn't catch it all. Just a few words. Should have stayed quiet. I'm not even sure he meant it for me. Maybe he meant it for himself. I know that story was heavy. And honestly, I debated telling it. But that's the thing about small towns, right? Sometimes the darkest things aren't the ones you find in the woods or the lake. Sometimes they wear whistles and call you champ. But not all of it stays hidden. Some secrets dig themselves out, even when you try to bury them. Like what happened at the diner. Let me tell you about that one. There's this diner in my hometown. The Griddle Stop. Real original name, I know. It's one of those chrome-sided, 24/7 places that looks like it fell straight out of the 1960s and never bothered to update. Same checkered floor, same booths with cracked red vinyl, same old jukebox in the corner that only plays songs from before you were born. Greasy coffee, runny eggs, and the best damn pancakes this side of the county. Everyone went there. Cops, truckers, night shift workers, high school kids sneaking in after curfew. If you lived in town, you had your usual, and they had it memorized before your butt hit the seat. But the real reason people kept coming back? Jolene. She'd been a waitress there for as long as I could remember. Tall, wiry, always wore her hair up in a messy twist with a pen shoved through it. She had this voice like gravel and molasses, kind of raspy, kind of sweet, and she never forgot your order. Ever. I swear, you could have told her once, 10 years ago, that you liked extra crisp bacon, and she'd remember that forever. But what really set Jolene apart was her memory for everything else. She knew everything that went on in that town. Who was cheating on who got arrested and then quietly let go, who bought a bottle of whiskey every Sunday for cooking, even though everyone knew damn well it was for drinking. She didn't gossip. She didn't need to. Just gave you this little smile when certain names came up and you knew she knew. She was like a living archive of the town's sins, tucked behind a counter and refilling your mug. And then one day she vanished. I still remember how quiet it was when I walked into the diner that morning. The usual clink of plates and hum of conversation, gone. People were sitting at their booths, looking around like they'd walked into the wrong dream. Oh, no Jolene. I sat down and waited. 10 minutes passed. Finally, one of the cooks came out, still in his apron, and said, "She didn't show. That was the last time anyone saw her. No resignation, no moved away sign. Just gone." And here's where it gets weird. That night, people started coming forward, kind of like how they did with Coach Harris, only slower, more cautious. Someone said Jolene had been asking questions about a construction project on the north side of town, supposed to be a new shopping center, but she'd noticed something was off, like they were moving dirt at night, bringing in trucks with no company logos, that kind of thing. Someone else swore they saw her arguing with a city official a week before she disappeared, said her face was furious, that she was pointing at some paperwork and yelling about zoning fraud and illegal dumping. Of course, no one could prove it. Town didn't have much of a paper trail, especially back then. But the truly chilling part came a week later. One of the newer waitresses was cleaning out the back room. Old file boxes, recipe cards, that kind of stuff. And she found a notebook. Jolene's handwriting. It wasn't a diary or anything personal. It was records, dates, times, license plate numbers, names, payments. I only saw it for a second. She let me flip through, before the owner made her hand it over to the police. I remember how detailed it was. Organized by year, color-coded, the last few entries were almost frantic, scrawled in red ink. They know I know. The trucks keep coming after midnight. Something's buried behind Lot 7. And the final entry? If anything happens to me, start with the mayor. That notebook disappeared too. We were told it was misplaced in evidence. Case closed. No missing person. No foul play suspected. But we all knew better. 2 months later, the construction site burned down. Official story was faulty wiring, but people heard an explosion. Real loud, like something was being erased. And the mayor resigned the next year. Family reasons. I still go to that diner sometimes when I visit home. It's not the same. The new girls are nice, sure, but it feels hollow, like the heart of the place is missing. Every so often, I see someone glance toward the kitchen and go quiet, like they half expect Jolene to walk out with a tray in hand and that crooked smile. She never does. Her picture's not on the wall. No in memory of. Just silence. And let me tell you something else. Lot 7. Still empty. Grass won't grow right there. Dirt's the wrong color. And every now and then, when it rains real heavy, something rises to the surface. Last time I was there, I saw a corner of what looked like old license plate metal sticking out from the mud. No one touched it. We all just looked at it and walked away. You'd think all this would be enough for one town, right? A haunted lake house, a predatory coach, a vanished waitress with a book of secrets. But sometimes, the town doesn't make the darkness. Sometimes, it invites it in. That's what happened with the road behind the cemetery. That's where we're going next. Every town has a place you're not supposed to go. Ours was called Morgan's Stretch, a narrow 2-lane road that ran behind the old cemetery and just kind of ended. No signs, no houses, just overgrown trees, broken fencing, and dirt that turned to swamp when it rained. It wasn't on any GPS, wasn't labeled on town maps. Ask someone where it led, and they'd say something vague, like, just loops back into the woods. But no one ever drove it, not even for dares. Not even drunk teens trying to impress each other. People didn't talk about it much either. It was like an agreed-upon blind spot. Until one night I drove it. I wasn't trying to be brave or prove anything. It was just, I was tired. I'd gotten off a late shift at the gas station, taken a wrong turn, trying to avoid a detour, and suddenly, there I was. I knew where I was the moment my headlights hit the crooked, rusted sign hanging sideways from one nail. No streetlights, no sounds, but cicadas. And my gut telling me to turn around. But the road was too narrow to do it clean, so I kept driving, looking for a wider shoulder or an opening to flip around. And then things started to get weird. First, the radio fuzzed out. Not static, just dead air. No hum, no signal. Even the CD player wouldn't load, just silence. Then the trees started closing in, not metaphorically, actually leaning. The branches curling overhead like fingers. Leaves brushing the top of my car like they were reaching for it. The air changed too. Heavy. Wet. You know that feeling right before a thunderstorm? That pressure in your chest? Like the sky's holding its breath? That's what it felt like. Still, I kept going. And that's when I saw her. At first I thought it was a deer, something darting across the road. But as I got closer, I saw her standing just beyond the tree line. A girl, barefoot, white nightgown. She looked, not lost exactly, more like she was waiting. I slowed down. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared right at me, with eyes too large for her face. I know how that sounds. Trust me, I do. Yeah, but I'm not making this up. I rolled down my window about halfway and leaned out. Are you okay? No answer. Not even a flinch. Just this eerie stillness. Like she was listening to something behind me. I turned to look over my shoulder. Nothing but road. When I turned back, she was gone. Like vanished. There was no place she could have gone. Not in that short time. The trees were too dense, too close together. She just wasn't there anymore. And then, my engine died. No sputter, no warning. Just click, dead. I sat there for maybe a full minute, heart hammering, every instinct screaming at me to move. I tried the key, nothing. Tried again, still nothing. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something move in the rear view mirror. Not a person. Not an animal. Something tall and crawling. On all fours, but not in a normal way. Its limbs were too long, bending at wrong angles, scraping the pavement as it crept closer. Its face, I'll never forget it. It wasn't like anything I'd seen before, not quite human, not quite animal, more like a mask made of wet paper. Featureless but suggestive. You felt a mouth, even if you couldn't see one. You knew it was smiling. I slammed the door lock, slapped the ignition again. The car roared back to life like it had never been dead. I didn't wait. I floored it, and I swear the road moved under me, like it was stretching, pulling me forward, refusing to let me leave. But I did. Eventually, the trees thinned, the air lifted, and I saw the cemetery gate in my rear view. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly sideswiped a stop sign. When I got home, I sat in my driveway for a long time, engine running, too scared to turn it off. The next day I drove back in broad daylight. I figured maybe it would look different, more normal. Maybe my brain had just gone wild in the dark. But there was no road. I swear to you it was gone, not overgrown, not blocked off, just not there. The stretch between the cemetery and the river was uninterrupted trees, solid forest, not even tire tracks. I asked around. Brought it up casually at the diner. At church, everyone just smiled and shook their head. There's no road back there. But what about Morgan's Stretch? I'd say. And they'd look confused, or worse, concerned. Like I'd said something I shouldn't have. I found an old man at the VFW who remembered it. Said it was used back in the 1930s, maybe 40s. Something about a covered bridge, then a landslide. Said there were rumors of a burial pit out there for paupers and unnamed bodies, maybe even plague victims. Said the town closed it off, buried it. But that doesn't explain what I saw. It doesn't explain why, every now and then, just after dark, my radio will cut out for no reason. I'll swear I can hear that same silence humming in the speakers, like it's waiting, like it remembers me. So yeah, small towns are quiet, cozy, charming, but sometimes the quiet isn't peace. Sometimes it's a cover. We've had monsters in uniforms, women who vanished mid-shift, roads that erase themselves, and next, well, this one hits even closer. Because this time, the darkness moved into my neighborhood, and it brought kids with it. Let me tell you about the family on Harlan Street. When I was in middle school, a new family moved into the house at the very end of Harlan Street, you know? The one with the peeling white shutters and the wraparound porch nobody ever used. That house had been empty for years. Some said it was haunted. Others said it had black mold. Either way, no one touched it. The yard was always overgrown, the fence falling in. It looked like it belonged in a forgotten photo album. So when a U-Haul pulled up one Monday morning and started unloading furniture, everyone noticed. They weren't loud or flashy. It's just wrong. There's no better way to say it. They were too quiet. The dad was tall, real pale, always wore long sleeves. Even in August, the mom had this strange kind of stillness to her, like she moved in slow motion. The only time we saw her blink was when the sun hit her face. And the kids, 2 of them, boy and girl, probably 10 or 11. They didn't wave, didn't smile. They'd just stand in the front yard sometimes, perfectly still, like they were waiting for someone to say something. I remember once riding my bike past their place, just coasting, not trying to bother anyone. And the boy stared at me the entire time. It's not like a kid. It's not curious or shy. It was like a dog tracking a squirrel. No emotion. It's just attention. I sped up. And here's where things start to turn. First, the pets started disappearing. At first, it was just a couple cats, stray outdoor types. No one thought much of it. But then it was Mr. Dobbin's golden retriever, and the Miller twins' rabbit, and someone's chicken coop got emptied. Every hen gone, no feathers, no prints. The only consistent detail? Every house that lost a pet was within 2 blocks of Harlan Street. Then came the noises, high-pitched, like a kettle boiling but far away. People swore they could hear it in their basements, always at night. A few thought it was just old pipes or bad wiring, but no electrician could find the source. One guy said his crawl space smelled like burnt hair and wouldn't let his kids play in the backyard anymore. By then, the neighbors were whispering, "I think they're cult people," someone said, or off-the-grid types, survivalists. I bet they homeschool. You ever see those kids leave the house? Nobody ever had? The strangest thing was that there was never any light from that house after dark. No porch lamp, no flicker from TVs, just this weird dim glow, faint yellowish, like a candle in the basement. Then, just after Halloween, something changed. It started with Miss Parsons. She was 84, lived across the street from them. A sweet old lady made banana bread for the whole block every Sunday. She collapsed on her porch one evening just out of nowhere. When the paramedics came, she was babbling, something about the eyes and the dirt in the walls and don't let them inside. She died that night. Then it was Bobby, the mailman. Quit his route midweek, left a note on his supervisor's desk. I will not deliver to 316 Harlan Street ever again. Refused to say more. A few days later, the Hendersons, who lived next door, packed up and moved overnight, left furniture behind. Dog bowls still full, never came back for any of it. By Thanksgiving, half the neighborhood wouldn't go near the place. But I was 13, and 13-year-olds are stupid. So of course I decided I had to see what was going on. It was me and my friend Jared. We snuck out around 1 a.m., crept up to the side yard, and ducked behind the busted picket fence. I remember the grass was wet, but not from dew. It felt slick, like something had soaked into it. The windows were dark, no sound. We were about to leave, both of us shaking, when the basement light clicked on. Just one bulb, buzzing, and we saw them, the two kids, standing at opposite corners of the basement, perfectly still, facing each other. Then the father stepped between them, only he wasn't right. He was. Longer than he should have been. Limbs too extended, neck too thin. Like someone had taken a normal man and stretched him out like taffy. His shadow moved, but his body didn't. He raised one arm, impossibly slow, and the kids collapsed, not fainted, folded, like paper dolls. Jared made a noise, just a gasp, but loud enough. The father turned toward the window, and I swear to God he saw us. No delay, no hesitation, just immediate eye contact. His eyes weren't angry. They weren't even surprised. They were expectant, like he'd been waiting for us. We ran. I don't remember getting home. Just remember locking every door, pulling the blinds, and not sleeping until the sun came up. The next morning, Jared moved to his dad's in another state. We didn't talk again for a year. I kept watching the house, but nothing else happened for a while. Then one night, maybe a month later, there was a fire. No sirens, no neighbors outside. I just woke up around 3 a.m. and saw the sky flickering orange as the house was burning from the inside. No smoke, just this silent, steady glow from every window. I wanted to call 911, but when I picked up the phone, there was no dial tone. Same for my cell, no service. By the time the sun came up, the house was gone. Not charred, not collapsed, gone. Just an empty lot. No ash. No foundation, just flat grass where the place had been, and a single wooden rocking chair sitting in the middle of it, still rocking. We asked the city what happened. They said there was never a house at 316 Harlan Street. They said that address didn't exist, but I know it did, and I know what I saw. To this day, I don't drive down Harlan Street. I don't even walk that part of the block. And every once in a while, late at night, I'll hear a high-pitched whine from my basement. Faint, like a tea kettle, but I don't go down to check. Not anymore. So far, we've had disappearances, cover-ups, whispers, and monsters dressed in human skin. But what if I told you one of the darkest things in our town's history wasn't paranormal or criminal? What if it was institutional? The next story isn't about ghosts. It's about what happens when a town forgets on purpose. Let me tell you about the school nobody remembers. You ever remember something so vividly, only to find out nobody else does? Like not even a hint? Not even a vague, oh yeah, maybe. Just blank stares. That's how it was with Dunlow Elementary. I went there. I know I did. I remember the gravel parking lot, the weirdly low water fountains, and the way the fluorescent lights flickered in the gym. I remember how the cafeteria always smelled like boiled carrots, and how we weren't allowed to wear red on Wednesdays, a rule no one ever explained. My homeroom teacher was Mrs. Elway. Tight curls, heavy perfume, big jangly earrings shaped like cats. She used to read to us every Friday from a book that didn't have a title on the cover, just a black spine. That was second grade. Then one summer, the school was just gone. I don't mean it closed, I mean erased. No news, no community meetings, no announcements. One day it was there, and the next, a field. It's not even construction tape. Just grass. Flat. Smooth. Like it had always been that way. I asked my mom about it. She blinked. What school? Dunlow? The one I went to? She laughed, thinking I was joking. Honey, you went to Lincoln Elementary. No, I said. That's where I transferred after second grade. But she just shook her head. No, you've been at Lincoln since kindergarten. I thought maybe she was just misremembering. Busy mom stuff, you know? So I went digging. Old report cards. All Lincoln, school photos. Lincoln? Even my second grade yearbook, the one I swear had Dunlow printed in gold foil across the front. Now read Lincoln Elementary. 2007. But I remember Dunlow. I remember the hallway with green tile and the weird mural of kids holding hands with no faces. I remember the rope climb in the gym, and how a girl named Kayla fell from the top and broke her wrist. I remember the janitor, Mr. Hush, who never spoke but always whistled the same four-note tune over and over again. I remember because I dream about that tune sometimes. Still, years later. And here's where it gets really strange. When I was in college, I came home one summer and decided to go for a walk. Just to clear my head, no plan. I wasn't even thinking about Dunlow, until my feet brought me to that field. I hadn't been there in over a decade. It looked the same, flat grass, maybe an acre wide, surrounded by trees that seemed denser than I remembered. Taller, hungrier. I stood there for a while, letting old feelings rise. Do you ever get hit with déjà vu and grief at the same time? Like remembering something precious, but also knowing it's been taken? Then I saw it, near the far edge of the field, half hidden in the grass. A metal plate, like a maintenance hatch. It was rusted and warped, but you could still make out the faded imprint. Property of Dunlow ISD. I knelt down, brushed off the dirt, and suddenly, I wasn't alone. There was a sound behind me, not footsteps, more like breathing. Turned. Nothing. Just wind. But I swear, for half a second, I smelled boiled carrots. I left in a hurry, didn't run, didn't look back, but I couldn't let it go, so I started asking around. Old neighbors, former teachers, people who'd lived in town for decades. Most gave me polite confusion. Few laughed. One woman, Mrs. Geraldine from up the street, went completely silent when I asked, looked away, and said, "You're too young to remember Dunlow." "I do remember," I said. "No," she said, soft and sharp. "You remember something they let you keep." Yeah, that was the first time I felt really scared, because it didn't feel like she was being cryptic. It felt like she was warning me. That night, I had the dream again. The rope climb, the mural, the faceless children, Mr. Hush. Only this time, he wasn't whistling. He was standing at the end of the hallway, his mouth wide open, eyes black and empty. He's holding a stack of blank report cards in both hands. I woke up in a cold sweat, heart racing. And the worst part, outside my window. But when I yanked open the curtains, nothing. No one. Just the wind in the trees. After that, I dropped it for a while. Until, a few months ago, I visited the town library and found an old zoning map from 1984. I wasn't looking for Dunlow, I swear, just flipping through out of curiosity. But there it was, labeled clearly. Dunlow Elementary School, right where that field is now. I showed the librarian, this sweet older guy who's worked there since forever. He went quiet, then took the book from my hands. "We don't keep this version on file," he said, almost gently. "Someone must have misfiled it." Then he walked into the back room. When I went to check the map later, it was gone. Replaced with a newer version. No Dunlow, just empty green space labeled community garden. So here's where I've landed. I don't think Dunlow was just a school. I think something happened there. Something the town covered up or buried. I think maybe the kids who went there remember things they're not supposed to. And I think that's why no one talks about it. Because if we did, we might wake something up. You know, it's one thing when people choose not to talk about something. But it's another when something else does the forgetting for you. Ghost towns, vanishing houses, erased schools. But what happens when the darkness pretends to be a person, and someone lives among you, and they're not? Real. Let me tell you about the neighbor who never blinked. I grew up in a cul-de-sac where nothing exciting ever happened. Quiet suburb, identical lawns. Everyone drove silver sedans. The kind of place where the mailboxes all leaned the same way. You knew your neighbors by the way their porch lights flickered at dusk. We had barbecues on Memorial Day, car washes for the high school band, and Halloween decorations that went up a month too early. That kind of neighborhood, except for one house. The third one on the left, pale blue siding, a wind chime that never moved, even when it stormed. That's where Mr. Gardner lived. Except, I'm not sure he ever really lived there. He'd been on the block as long as I could remember. Older guy, maybe late 50s, when I was a kid. Always wore the same beige cardigan, no matter the season. Wireframe glasses, neat hair, combed flat, and he never blinked. I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but I mean it. I used to sit on my front porch and watch him water his garden. Slow, methodical, back and forth. He'd be out there for half an hour sometimes, just moving that hose like a pendulum. And the whole time, eyes open, wide, unmoving. Not angry, not tired. Just ... blank, like he was watching something behind your shoulder. I asked my mom once if she'd ever talked to him. She gave me a weird look. He keeps to himself. Then she changed the subject. Years went by, and nothing about Mr. Gardner changed. Not his clothes, not his yard, not even his car. An old Buick that somehow never rusted, despite being parked in the same exact spot, unmoved for a decade. When I was about 16, I got curious. Really curious. So one day I walked up to him. He was trimming hedges. It's perfectly square, like he used a ruler. I said, "Hi, Mr. Gardner." He didn't respond, just kept trimming, eyes straight ahead, no blinking. I tried again. Nice day out. Still nothing. But when I turned to leave, I heard something. Soft, almost under his breath. He said, "It's always nice here." Not a reply. Not really. More like a recording. Like he was repeating a line he'd practiced too many times. I remember thinking, maybe he's got dementia, but didn't sit right. People with memory loss don't act like mannequins. They don't stand motionless in windows for hours. Which is exactly what he started doing. At night, you'd see him there, standing behind his sheer white curtains, lit by the dim glow of a floor lamp. Not moving, just watching the street. I started avoiding his house. Even crossed to the other side of the road when I walked home. But then things got worse. One morning, my friend Cam texted me, "Dude, you gotta see this." I opened the video he sent, shaky phone footage. Showed Mr. Gardner at 2 a.m. digging in his front yard. No lights, no shovel, just his hands. He was scooping dirt out in big robotic swipes. Silent, focused, like he was digging to find something, not bury it. Cam lived across the street and had seen movement from his bedroom. When he yelled, "Hey, you okay?" from the window, Mr. Gardner froze, then slowly looked up, not at Cam, at the camera, and smiled, but only with his teeth. It was the only expression I'd ever seen him make. We didn't post the video, didn't tell anyone, because that night, Cam's phone went missing. From his locked bedroom, just gone. And the next morning, the hole in Gardner's yard, perfectly filled, no dirt piles. No sign he'd ever touched it. But a new flower bed had appeared, fresh soil, blood-red tulips, and in the middle, a tiny ceramic figurine of a boy, arms raised like he was waving for help. We were done after that. We stopped watching, stopped talking about it. But one night, about a year later, I came home late from work. Maybe 1 a.m. as I pulled into the driveway, felt it. That pressure on the back of your neck when someone's looking at you. I turned slowly, and there he was, standing at the end of my lawn. Mr. Gardner, not moving, not blinking. I got out of the car and whispered, "What do you want?" He didn't answer, just tilted his head and mimicked me. "What do you want?" Same pitch, same inflection, like he'd recorded my voice in real time. Then he turned and walked away. But here's the thing, his feet never touched the ground. I know how that sounds, I really do, but I swear he was gliding, like something was carrying him just above the grass. The next morning, there was a dead bird on my porch, clean cut, wings stretched open, no blood, just placed there, like a gift. I left town for college soon after, didn't come back for years, but last summer I visited for a wedding and drove by my old neighborhood. I expected the same cul-de-sac, the same sedans, the same sleepy silence. But when I got to Gardner's house, it was empty, boarded up, overgrown, paint peeling, like no one had lived there in decades. And the weirdest part, when I asked around the neighbors, the real estate agent, even the town clerk, nobody remembered him. Not a single person could tell me who lived there before. They all said it had been vacant since the storm. What storm? I asked. Blank stares. So now I'm not sure what scares me more. The idea that Mr. Gardner was never human, the possibility that he was, and we all forgot what he did. That neighbor gave me the chills for years, but at least he kept to himself. The next story isn't about someone watching from behind a curtain. It's about someone who stepped into the light, someone everyone trusted, and what they found when he disappeared left an entire town scarred. Let me tell you about the preacher's locked basement. I grew up in one of those southern towns where the church was the beating heart of the community, the other kind. Sunday service was less a suggestion and more like a law. Everybody knew everybody, and if you missed a potluck, 3 people would show up at your door with leftovers and judgment. And in the center of it all was Pastor Eddings. He'd been at Trinity First Baptist for longer than I'd been alive. Big man, always in a dark suit and suspenders. He had this deep, smooth voice that made every word feel like it was meant just for you. It's the kind of preacher who could say, "God loves you," and you'd cry, even if you didn't believe in God, and he loved the kids. Every Sunday after service, he'd D-line us up by the vestibule and give us all butterscotch candies from a little crystal bowl. He knew our names, our birthdays, our grades. He remembered who played trumpet and who was scared of dogs. He baptized me when I was 8. I remember how warm the water felt and how safe. So when he vanished, it didn't feel real. It was a Tuesday. He didn't show up for the weekly men's breakfast at Hattie's Diner, which he never missed. People waited an hour before someone called the church. His office door was locked, lights off, car in the back lot, so the deacon called the police. And when they broke open the office, he wasn't there. His phone, his wallet, his Bible, all gone. But here's the part that still makes my stomach flip. Down in the basement, the one no one had been allowed in for as long as I could remember, they found another door, a heavy steel one. Dead-bolted from the outside, it wasn't on the building plans. No one even knew it existed. They brought in cutters, broke through, and found a narrow concrete hallway. It led to a second room, no windows, 1 light bulb, cold as a freezer. And inside were shelves. Dozens of them lined with labeled binders, each one marked with a date and a name. Not just names from the congregation, kids' names, mine included. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest when I heard. Each binder had notes, photos, attendance sheets, behavior logs. Some were simple, quiet in Sunday school, struggles with group prayer, enjoys hymns. Others, detailed, clinical, like sensitive to loud sounds, avoids eye contact, exhibits high moral empathy, will not lie when asked direct questions. It was like he'd been studying us, not guiding us, monitoring. That day everything cracked. The church shut down immediately. News vans showed up within hours. FBI got involved. People wept in the streets. Some refused to believe it, swore he'd been framed or taken. But here's the kicker. There was no sign of Pastor Eddings, not at the airport, not on traffic cams. No purchases, no phone pings, no messages. He vanished like smoke. And we never got him back. Some folks tried to rebuild. We had a new pastor eventually, but the trust was gone. The feeling that your community had your back, that it was built on something solid, disappeared with him. People started leaving town, not in droves, quietly, one by one. You'd drive past a house and the curtains would be drawn, the lawn unmowed, the windows dusty, like the place was holding its breath. Then one day someone tore down the church. Not officially. It wasn't on any demo schedule. It just collapsed. Middle of the night. Neighbors heard a loud rumble like thunder, and by sunrise, it was rubble. Some said lightning struck it, others said it was termites or sinkhole damage. But there were no burn marks, and the foundation. Gone, not cracked, missing, as if it had been lifted. Like someone peeled the building off the earth and tossed it aside. When I went back a few months later, there was nothing there. It was just wild grass and a line of sunflowers growing in a perfect arc where the altar used to be. People don't talk about Pastor Eddings anymore, not because we forgot, but because remembering hurts too much. Because he wasn't just a preacher, he was a pillar. And when pillars fall, they don't just break, they shatter everything around them. Some towns never recover from something like that. You think you know someone? You think your town is built on truth. But sometimes, that truth gets buried. Literally. The next story is about a small town park, a time capsule, and what they found inside decades later that changed everything. Let me tell you about the capsule they were never supposed to open. When I was 12, I helped bury a time capsule in my middle school playground. It was part of this whole town centennial celebration. There were fireworks, a parade, a kid-friendly reenactment of some colonial-era meeting where everyone wore itchy vests and tricorn hats. You know, history, but make it fun. At the end of it all, the mayor stood on a little wooden stage and declared that the children of the town would place a capsule in the earth for future generations. We lined up, one by one, and dropped in our items. Letters to our future selves, friendship bracelets, photos, cards. Someone even threw in a signed VHS of The Lion King. They sealed the capsule in a silver case, locked it with 2 padlocks, and buried it behind the baseball diamond near the old elm tree. The plaque said, "To be opened. July 4th, 2076. I remember thinking, I'll be 83 when that happens. Then I forgot about it. Almost everyone did, until it got dug up early, not on purpose, not as a celebration. I had backhoe. The town had greenlit a new concession stand next to the field. Construction started one hot morning in late June. I was 28 at the time, working freelance out of town, but my mom still lived there and called me that night. Something weird happened at the field, she said. They found that old time capsule. They what? It's not 2076 yet. She laughed kind of nervously. Well, yeah, I know. But ... something's off. When I came to visit that weekend, I found the whole park roped off with yellow tape. The silver capsule was sitting on a folding table under a tent, surrounded by county officials and a few guys in hazmat suits. Hazmat suits. For a kid's time capsule, that's when I started asking questions. At first, nobody gave me anything concrete. But eventually, I ran into my old science teacher, Mr. Hal Vorson, who still volunteered with the historical committee. He took me aside and said, "You didn't hear this from me." Then he told me what they found. The capsule wasn't filled with letters or toys or candy wrappers, at least. Not anymore. Inside were bones, tiny fragmented ones. Animal, mostly bird, rodent, maybe a raccoon. But mixed in were what looked like human remains. Small, like a child's jawbone. With 2 baby teeth still rooted in the socket, there were also dozens of Polaroids. All of them heavily degraded, but you could still make out the shapes, some showed us. The kids who had buried the capsule, standing in a row, smiling awkwardly at the camera. Others showed different children, not from our town, not from our school. These kids were dressed in clothes from the 1950s. Frilly dresses, knickerbockers, hair parted neatly. But none of the adults recognized them, and no records matched their faces. Some pictures were even older, sepia-toned, curled at the edges. Kids standing beside men in dark coats with their hands on their shoulders. Each one had the same caption written on the back in ballpoint pen. They never left. That's when things got really strange. The capsule was taken by the state. Quietly. No press release, no official statements. Just a few men in black SUVs who packed it up and drove it off one night like it was radioactive. The area was paved over a week later. No concession stand. No plaque. No mention of the capsule at all. It was like the whole thing had never happened. But I remember, because I was there when we buried it. And I remember what I put inside a letter to my future self, written on red notebook paper and purple gel pen. I told myself to stay weird, to keep drawing monsters, to not forget the names of my best friends, Katie, Jordan, and Luis. But what haunts me is this. My mom still had a shoebox of my childhood stuff in her attic. I went digging through it, half hoping to find a copy of that letter. Maybe I'd made 2 versions. And at the very bottom of the box, under some old books and a dried macaroni necklace, I found it. The same letter, same handwriting, same purple pen. But folded the wrong way, and on the back. Someone had written something in pencil. Don't dig. No signature. Just those 2 words. And the handwriting wasn't mine. I've asked everyone. Katie, Jordan, Luis, they don't remember the capsule at all. It's like it was erased from their memories. Or maybe it was never supposed to be there to begin with. Some stories dig themselves back up, no matter how deep you bury them. But this next one? This is the one that still wakes me up at night, because it's not just strange or creepy, it's unresolved. Let me tell you what happened the night every clock in our town stopped. It happened on a Tuesday, not a dramatic Tuesday. No storms, no blackouts, no sirens. Just a regular sleepy evening in our quiet little town. I was living in my late grandmother's house then. A creaky old place with floral wallpaper and clocks. So many clocks. She'd collected them over the years. Cuckoos, wind-ups, ones shaped like cats with wagging tails. Some ticked, some chimed, some just sat there dead. When I moved in, I left most of them on the walls. It felt respectful, familiar, and that's probably why I noticed it first. I was brushing my teeth that night when I heard nothing. No ticking, no hourly chime, a soft mechanical whir from the kitchen wall, just silence. So I walked around and checked them. Every single clock, every single one had stopped. 10:13 p.m., even the electric ones. Even the digital microwave display, which flashed normally after a power cut, except this time it didn't flash, just frozen. 10:13. At first I thought maybe it was just my house. Old wiring, a freak circuit failure. Then I got a text from my neighbor Sam. "Hey, your clock's working." So I knew I wasn't alone. I looked out the window and saw porch lights flipping on across the street, people stepping outside, phones in hand. That weird hush that comes when no one knows what's happening yet. I stepped out too. And that's when we realized every clock in the neighborhood had stopped at 10:13 p.m. Battery clocks, wall clocks, phones had frozen too. You could swipe them, use apps, but the time wouldn't change. It said 10:13, and it stayed that way, no matter how long you waited. We stood in the street, maybe 20 of us, staring at our phones, blinking, waiting for them to tick forward. Nothing. Then someone screamed. It was old Mrs. Fowler, 2 doors down. She was pointing at the sky. At first I didn't see it, then I did. It wasn't a light or a UFO or anything sci-fi like that. It was the absence of something. Like a piece of the sky had been cut out. A perfect circle, just above the ridge of the town's water tower. No stars inside it, no clouds, just black, pure, and flat, like someone had removed a section of the night. And it was slowly getting bigger, not fast, almost imperceptibly, but it was growing. Nobody moved, nobody talked. Just the distant sound of crickets that weren't supposed to be chirping anymore because, well, it wasn't after 10:13. Time had stopped. But the crickets didn't care. I tried to take a photo. It didn't work, not in the usual, blurry phone camera way. The photo wouldn't save. I clicked, the shutter sound played, and then the image just disappeared, like it never existed. I tried again. Same thing. Same thing. Then I tried to call 911. Dead tone. Not even a dial sound. We checked the news. The internet worked. But it had stopped updating. No new tweets, no Facebook refresh. Just a looping feed of posts from 10:13 and before. I checked my laptop. Opened the weather app. Still showed clear skies. 10:13 p.m. So we waited. The sky hole kept expanding. I don't know how to describe it other than wrong. Not scary like a monster or loud noise, but deep in the gut scary. Existential. Like the rules of reality were bending, and we were the frogs in the boiling water. Some people panicked. A few screamed. Someone started praying loudly. Then, as quickly as it began, it ended. At 11:24 p.m., all the clocks suddenly jumped. Phones updated. Oven beeps resumed. The microwave turned back on. The ticking filled the air again. The sky whole again. Stars back in place. And clouds drifting lazily like nothing had happened. No trace of that missing piece. And all of us. Every last one of us who saw it just stood there, blinking. There were no reports the next day. No news articles. Nothing on the radio. I even called the local meteorological station. They said there'd been no anomalies recorded at all. But something changed after that night. I started getting nosebleeds. Small ones, random, but they always happened at exactly 10:13 p.m. Every single night. Even if I wasn't paying attention. And even if I wasn't awake. And I wasn't the only one. Sam told me his dreams changed. They were vivid, dark, and always started with the sound of ticking. Swears he keeps waking up in places that aren't his room. One night he woke up in his garage, keys in his hand. The car was running, radio playing white noise. Another neighbor, Mr. Gillian, moved away within a week, sold his house for half its value, and left without saying goodbye. He sent me a postcard 6 months later with no return address. It said, "Clocks are still broken. Be careful, it's not over." Then there's the weirdest part. That year, the town's historical society unveiled a new mural downtown, a big painting of our city skyline at night. And right above the water tower was a perfect black circular blotch. No one talked about it. No artist ever took credit for it. The mayor said it had always been part of the plan. But I know what I saw. We all do. We just don't talk about it, because some things, they're too big for answers. And that's it for today's stories. Whether it was a vanished preacher, a haunted playground capsule, or a night when time itself paused, these were the stories my town never talks about, but we remember, in whispers, in dreams, in the spaces where time skips and silence lingers. If you made it this far, you're a legend. If you enjoyed these strange little windows into forgotten places, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and click the bell so you never miss the next one. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, and if something creepy or unexplained ever happened there, tell us. We just might feature it in the next episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and check your clocks. You never know when time might stop again.